This is Atomic Biscuits, and I'm your host, BACFA. Welcome to another episode of Atomic Biscuits. This is 2024-12-29, sugar in the tank. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas where you are. Extensive COVID-19 origins cover-up revealed, and the Biden administration was pulling the strings. This is the story by Banshee over at redstate.com. It's long been known, at least through basic intuition, that U.S. government officials went to great lengths to cover up the origins of the COVID-19 virus. Former NIAID Director Anthony Fauci infamously spent years publicly deflecting blame from China. Emails would later emerge showing Wuhan Institute of Virology funder Peter Daszak had emailed Fauci to thank him for dismissing the lab leak theory. If you aren't familiar with the entire saga, which is long and winding, be sure to check out Scott Honsel's extensive reporting on the matter. The level of corruption will blow your mind. But while we've known about the direct involvement of Fauci and others, just how deep did the Biden administration's obsession with protecting the Chinese go? A new report is shedding some light on that question. There's a link here to the X embedded article. The situation can be complicated and hard to follow, but if you read the excerpts provided by Jerry Dunleavy, it boils down to this. There was a rabid, seemingly inexplicable desire by most of the federal government under Joe Biden to rebuff any suggestion COVID-19 leaked from a lab. Much of that effort centers on an April 2021 assessment that was presented to Biden and would become the backbone of his administration's response to the origins of the virus. As is revealed, the FBI had ascertained a lab leak from Wuhan was the most likely explanation, placing a moderate confidence in their findings. Notably, that was the highest level of confidence applied by any of the other intelligence arms, despite the rest of them backing the zoonotic theory of natural origins. Yet no one from the FBI was even present at the briefing with Biden to present the counter. At the time, the FBI was the only agency that concluded a lab leak was likely, a judgment it had rendered with moderate confidence. But neither Bannon nor any other FBI officials were at the briefing to make their case firsthand to the president. Being the only agency that assessed that a laboratory origin was more likely, and the agency that expressed the highest level of confidence in its analysis of the source of the pandemic, we anticipated the FBI would be asked to attend the briefing, Bannon recalled in his first on-the-record interview on the subject. I find it surprising that the White House didn't ask. It wasn't just the FBI either. Scientists from the National Center for Medical Intelligence also backed the lab leak theory. They even specifically cited evidence that gain-of-function research was taking place in Wuhan, despite that being dismissed as a conspiracy theory by Fauci and others. The findings of those scientists were scuttled altogether, though, because the Defense Intelligence Agency had come to a different conclusion and seemed to have no stomach for entertaining the lab leak theory. Are you starting to see how this web of intelligence agencies can be manipulated to present a certain narrative regardless of the truth? 3 scientists at the National Center for Medical Intelligence, part of the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency, conducted a scientific study that concluded that COVID-19 was manipulated in a laboratory in a risky research effort, but that analysis was at odds with the assessment of their parent agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and wasn't incorporated in the report presented to Biden. Here's where things get even more sketchy. While the FBI was pushing to have the lab leak theory taken seriously, The World Health Organization released its report endorsing the natural origin theory of COVID-19. Many people rightly dismissed those findings as tainted by overbearing Chinese influence. But one State Department official didn't. That would be Adrienne Keene. She stepped in to provide a push for the WHO's report to be accepted as viable evidence of a natural origin. Guess what happened just 3 months later? She was made director of the Global Health Security for the National Intelligence Council. What a coincidence, right? She steps up to promote the China preferred narrative and suddenly gets a high-level promotion, putting her in charge of organizing the report on the origins of COVID-19. The FBI was already supporting the lab theory, but Adrienne Keene, a State Department official who had served as a consultant to WHO, advocated for taking the zoonotic theory seriously. She said that the WHO report shouldn't be completely discounted, according to participants. Keene, who had a PhD in infectious disease modeling from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, left the State Department shortly after the 90-day sprint to become the director for global health security for the National Intelligence Council. The council was given a central role in organizing the report under the supervision of James Murphy, the National Intelligence Officer for Weapons of Mass Destruction. It is impossible to ignore what appears to be a disturbing level of Chinese influence in the Biden administration. Whether that was being dictated from abroad or simply Biden officials being so entangled with the CCP that they felt the need to dismiss the lab leak theory on their own isn't that relevant. What's relevant is that a presidential administration was and remains inundated with people operating as Chinese proxies, that they were willing to manipulate national intelligence on an issue as important as COVID-19 should leave people questioning everything asserted by the federal government. As to Joe Biden himself, there's a certain level of deniability that appears to have been built in. As far as we know publicly, he was bombarded with intelligence heads promoting the natural origins theory. Yet, given the Biden family's extensive ties to China, including monetarily, it doesn't take much imagination to assume that the president wasn't as oblivious as he wanted the public to believe. This is a massive cover-up, and it feels like the surface has just been scratched. The incoming Donald Trump administration needs to dig much deeper into this issue. Again, this is over at redstate.com. Over at Breitbart.com, Javier Milei ranked most popular president in South America. A regional poll published on Wednesday by the research agency CB Consultora Opinión Pública found that Argentine President Javier Milei ranks as the most popular head of state in South America. The survey, conducted by the Argentina-based research agency across the region's countries during the month of December, found that the Argentine Libertarian president leads the charts, ending 2024 with an approval rating of 51.8%, making him both the highest-rated president in the region and the only one with an approval rating of over 50%. Uruguay's outgoing center-right president Luis Lacalle Pou ranked second with 49.8%, and Paraguayan conservative Santiago Peña ranked third with 46.7%. Milei's measured approval ratings during December marked an increase from the 50.2% recorded by the same opinion poll in its November reading. At the time, Milei occupied the ranking's second position against Lacalle Pou's 51.5% approval rating. During September's monthly poll results, Milei reportedly occupied the sixth position. Throughout his first year in office, Milei, who first took office in December 2023, implemented a dramatic overhaul of Argentina's bloated government institutions and enacted a series of drastic shock therapy measures and sweeping reforms to avert the collapse of the country's economy and avoid a hyperinflation spiral. The policies successfully reduced inflation from 25.5% in January to 2.4% in November. Most notably, CB Consultora Opinión Publica's survey found that all of the region's leftist presidents ranked as the worst rated alongside Venezuela's socialist dictator, Nicolás Maduro. Brazil's radical leftist president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva ranked fifth, with a 53.1% of respondents expressing an unfavorable opinion of Lula against 44.3% who responded favorably. Chile's far-left president, Gabriel Boric, ranked sixth with a 40.2% approval rating. In Colombia, Gustavo Petro, a former member of the Marxist M19 guerrilla and the nation's first leftist president ever, ranked seventh, with 39.9% of respondents expressing a favorable opinion of Petro against 56.6% who expressed an unfavorable opinion. Colombian media reported on Wednesday that the poll's results denote a downward trend in Petro's approval rating from November's 41.2%. The region's three worst-rated presidents, according to the survey's results, are Bolivia's socialist president, Luis Arce, Venezuelan socialist dictator Nicolás Maduro, and Peruvian President Dina Boluarte. Arce, as a notoriously pro-Iran president who is presently waging a lengthy power struggle over control of Bolivia against his former mentor and suspected pedophile Evo Morales, obtained an approval rating of 33.6% of respondents against 63.2% who responded unfavorably. Maduro, who held a highly fraudulent presidential election in late July and unleashed a brutal persecution campaign against dissidents who protested the fraudulent electoral event and its results, closed 2024 with a disapproval rating of 67.4%. Maduro is slated to begin a new fraudulently obtained six-year presidential term on January 10, 2025. Lastly, Peru's leftist president Dina Boluarte was rated by respondents as the worst in South America, with 76.4% expressing their disapproval of the Peruvian president. Boluarte, a former member of the Marxist Free Peru Party, took office and succeeded former Marxist President Pedro Castillo, who was impeached and arrested in December 2022 after he unsuccessfully attempted to dissolve Congress and stay in power via a failed anti-golpe or self-coup. Boluarte served as Castillo's vice president. The story appears over at Breitbart.com. Over at The Blaze, Obama ally pushes Raskin plan for Congress to nullify election, install Harris. Insurrection-y. Dems appear keen to once again thwart the will of the American people after spending years blathering about threats to democracy. Despite spending years complaining about threats to democracy, Democrats are scheming to thwart the collective will of the 77.2 million Americans who voted for President-elect Donald Trump in a fair and free election. In a December 26th op-ed for The Hill, titled "Congress Has the Power to Block Trump from Taking Office, but Lawmakers Must Act Now," David Schulte, a Chicago investment banker friend of both Barack Obama and failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, joined the former Democratic president of the New York City Bar Association, Evan Davis, in echoing Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat from Maryland's call in February for Congress to block Trump from taking office. The Democratic duo accused Trump at the outset of being an oath-breaking insurrectionist, not against the government but against the Constitution, and then tried standing up this allegation on the unsuccessful attempt by the Democrat lawmakers to convict Trump in early 2021 for supposed incitement of insurrection on the say-so of the Democrat appointees on the Colorado Supreme Court and on the Democrat January 6th committee members' partisan rhetoric. Apparently convinced that their appeals to the perceived wisdom of fellow Trump haters was sufficient to justify their scheme, the duo argued that it was still possible to void the Electoral College votes of the American people when sent to the President of the Senate. Failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris, and to give the Washington establishment the unearned win they so desperately crave. According to Schulte and Davis, the U.S. Supreme Court's 9-0 decision in Trump versus Anderson concerning Democrat attempts to keep Trump off the ballot in Colorado does not prevent Congress from rejecting electoral votes on January 6th on the basis of a supposed 14th Amendment disqualification. Schulte and Davis accused the conservative majority on the High Court of overreach when indicating that there must be new implementing federal legislation passed pursuant to the enforcement power specified in the 14th Amendment, and claimed that the Supreme Court does not have a say about the accounting of Electoral College votes because the rejection of the vote on constitutionally specific grounds is a non-reviewable political question. The Democratic duo then identified the way by which the 2024 election could be stolen and Harris installed as president. The Electoral Count Reform Act of 2022, a rewrite of the Electoral Count Act of 1887, identifies two grounds for a congressional objection to an Electoral College vote. The first objection calls into question whether the votes by electors were regularly given and whether the recipient was an eligible presidential candidate under the Constitution. The other basis on which Congress could object is if the document submitted by a state governor identifying the electors was defective. Schulte and Davis figured the way to go would be with the first objection. To make an objection under the Count Act requires a petition signed by 20% of the members of each house, wrote the Democrat duo. If the objection is sustained by majority vote in each house, the vote is not counted, and the number of votes required to be elected is reduced by the number of disqualified votes. If all votes for Trump were not counted, Kamala Harris would be elected president. While Democrats may have the numbers in both the House and the Senate to make their objection known numerically, this strategy is little more than wishful thinking of anti-democratic radicals. Representative Raskin contemplated going this route during a February 17th panel discussion at a D.C. bookstore. Raskin correctly and begrudgingly predicted at the time that the U.S. Supreme Court would rule that Trump could not be disqualified from Colorado's presidential primary ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, calling the imminent decision an abdication of the court's very clear duty to disqualify Donald Trump. Raskin said on camera, the justices on the Supreme Court want to kick it to the Congress, so it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. While apparently open to the idea, the Democrat congressman noted that the repeal of the people's will at the counting of the Electoral College votes really could lead to something akin to civil war. Raskin indicated further that after lawmakers disqualified the would-be president-elect, we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer responded Thursday to Schulte and Davis's op-ed, writing, "Surprised it took so long, but the left is back at trying to subvert the election. You people are sick," tweeted Eric Trump. Blaze TV host Steve Deese wrote, "This feels very insurrection-y." Oh, look, Democrats want to steal the election and invalidate the will of the American people, wrote Stephen Chung, a spokesman for Trump. Threat to democracy. Hey, look, insurrection, tweeted Blaze TV's Orrin McIntyre. If people just standing outside the Capitol can go to jail for years, then journalists absolutely can. Journalist Glenn Greenwald noted, watching Trump's most fanatical opponents argue that they have the right on January 6th to reject his Electoral College victory is one of the funniest things ever. I hope it spreads. Again, that is over at theblaze.com. Well, like all these other stories, there's more sugar in the tank over at Reuters. Biden delivers on threat to veto bill to expand U.S. judiciary. U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday vetoed legislation to add 66 new judges to understaffed federal courts nationally, a once widely bipartisan measure that would have been the first major expansion of the federal judiciary since 1990. The Judges Act, initially supported by many members of both parties, would have increased the number of trial court judges in 25 federal district courts in 13 states, including California, Florida, and Texas, in 6 waves every 2 years through 2035. Hundreds of judges appointed by presidents of both parties took the rare step of publicly advocating for the bill, saying federal caseloads have increased by more than 30% since Congress last passed legislation to comprehensively expand the judiciary. But the outgoing Democrat president made good on a veto threat issued 2 days before the bill passed the Republican-led House of Representatives on December 12th, in a 236 to 173 vote. In a message to the Senate formally rejecting the bill, Biden said it hastily creates new judgeships without addressing key questions about whether new judges were needed and how they would be allocated nationally. Republican Senator Todd Young of Indiana, who sponsored the bill in the Senate, said in response that the veto was partisan politics at its worst. By staggering the new judgeships over 3 presidential administrations, the bill's sponsors had hoped to get around lawmakers' long-standing concerns about creating new vacancies that a president of any opposing party could fill. It received the Democrat-led Senate's unanimous approval in August, but the bill lingered in the Republican-led House and was only taken up for a vote after Republican President-elect Donald Trump won the November 5th election and the opportunity to name the first batch of 25 judges. That prompted accusations from top House Democrats who began to abandon the measure that their Republican colleagues had broken the central promise of the legislation by having lawmakers approve the bill when no one knew who would appoint the initial wave of judges. If the bill had been enacted, Trump would have been able to fill 22 permanent and 3 temporary judgeships over 4 years in office on the top of the 100-plus judicial appointments he is already expected to make. Those appointments would allow Trump to further cement his influence on the judiciary. He made 234 judicial appointments during his first term in office, including 3 members of the U.S. Supreme Court's 6-3 conservative majority. Biden on Friday surpassed Trump's total number of judicial appointments with 235, though he named fewer appellate judges and only 1 Supreme Court during his tenure. Tom Homan has a message for Dems planning to resist Trump's deportation agenda. This is the story over at dailycaller.com. President-elect Donald Trump's incoming border czar has a message for any individual or jurisdiction that directly impedes the work of an immigration and customs enforcement agent. That's ICE. Prepare to face the consequences. Since Trump's election victory in November, an increasing number of Democrat-led cities and municipalities across the country have either ushered in new sanctuary laws or doubled down on policies already on their books. Tom Homan, the former acting director of ICE, who has been tapped by the president-elect to lead nationwide deportation efforts, says these jurisdictions have a right to stand aside and not to help deportation officers, but if they obstruct justice and blatantly block the agency from its mission, the possibility of charges are on the table. There are federal statutes on the books for knowingly concealing and harboring an illegal alien away from ICE officers, Homan said. There are statutes on the books about impeding federal law enforcement officers. They're all felonies. Now, these sanctuary cities cannot assist. Okay, that's fine. They can stand aside. That's fine, but they cannot cross that line, Homan continued. If they cross that line, we'll be asking the attorney's office to consider prosecution. The declaration could be the beginning of a showdown between the incoming administration, which has vowed to implement the largest deportation operation in U.S. history, and a number of liberal enclaves attempting to shield illegal immigrants from federal immigration law. The Los Angeles City Council in November fast-tracked an ordinance that designates the city a sanctuary haven for illegal migrants, barring local resources from being used for immigration enforcement. Similar actions have been taken with Boston City Council members voting to reaffirm their city's sanctuary status, San Diego County supervisors voting to expand their sanctuary laws by eliminating exceptions for migrants involved even in serious crimes, and elected officials in Arlington County, Virginia, also choosing to double down on their sanctuary policies following Trump's presidential victory. In what could shape up to be the largest resistance scheme to date, California Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom's office is reportedly mulling the creation of an immigrant support network that would connect illegal migrants facing the prospect of apprehension and deportation with an array of resources and services. While there is no official definition of a sanctuary city, the phrase generally refers to any locality that helps protect illegal migrants from ICE by having laws or other policies in place that prevent local law enforcement from assisting federal immigration officers. These laws generally prevent local officials from alerting ICE when an illegal migrant is in their custody or honoring an ICE detainer for any illegal migrant in their custody. While many Democrat-led cities have vowed to not help the Trump administration carry out its hawkish border agenda, some election officials have hinted at taking it further. Denver Mayor Mike Johnson suggested to a local outlet in November that he would have the Denver Police Department dispatched at the county lines to keep ICE agents out. While Johnson later backtracked on that particular idea, his comments spawned debate on what local officials are legally allowed and not allowed to do in opposition to immigration enforcement. There's certainly some tough talk coming from these mayors in sanctuary cities, but we'll see how that plays out in reality. Eric Rourke, research director for Numbers USA, a Washington, D.C. based group that advocates for less immigration in the country, said to Daily Caller. He added that a lot of rhetoric coming from sanctuary cities is just like bluffing. I think that's what we're seeing now, political posturing as opposed to outlining a course of action. I doubt you're going to see the Denver mayor going out and physically resisting federal agents who are trying to carry out immigration enforcement. But if he does, certainly there's a violation of law for which he can be prosecuted. Work at it. One of the most notorious cases involves a judge in Massachusetts who, during the first Trump administration, allegedly allowed an illegal migrant in her courtroom to escape through a back door in order to evade an ICE agent who she knew was waiting in the lobby to apprehend him. Prosecutors charged that judge, Shelley Joseph, in April of 2019 with conspiracy to obstruct justice and obstruction of justice for her actions. In an agreement with federal prosecutors to drop the charges in September 2022, she allowed her case to be referred to the Commission on Judicial Conduct, which is tasked with investigating misconduct allegations by members of the bench. Earlier in December, the commission issued its report accusing Joseph of willful judicial misconduct and committing actions that were unbecoming of a judicial officer. That's what should be done, Rourke said of the case. She allegedly aided and abetted an illegal alien in the courthouse. Beyond the passage of sanctuary laws and the possibility of outright obstruction, resistance to Trump's immigration agenda will likely take other forms, Rourke added. Like in the first administration, many anti-ICE and open border organizations will likely ramp up litigation in an effort to block or at least slow down progress on immigration enforcement reform. The American Civil Liberties Union, a behemoth liberal organization, filed more than 400 legal actions against Trump and his first administration since 2016, with a large portion targeting immigration directives. And the group has pledged to go to court once again once Trump resumes office. However, Rourke believes that Trump is walking back into the White House more informed and armed with better talent this go round. The Trump administration is going to come in with people like Homan who understand the system, how it works, and how the law works, he said to Daily Caller News Foundation. I think that would be very different this time than in Trump's first term, where they would try to figure it out. The staffing is going to be much better on immigration, and I think they're going to have a plan to not only carry out enforcement, but how to win in court, he continued. I don't think they'll have as much problem defending in court many of their policies. Homan told the DCNF that the American people can expect to see a dramatic increase in immigration enforcement and the resurrection of a number of Trump-era policies, such as the return of the Remain in Mexico program, the re-implementation of a safe third country agreement, more construction of the U.S.-Mexico border wall, and a reorientation of ICE enforcement policies. The incoming border czar appeared unfazed at the prospect of stiff resistance to the ambitious agenda he has in store for the country. When asked about the individuals who have gone so far as to threaten him and his family over his policies, he just had 3 words to say: "Come get some." Again, that's over at dailycaller.com. Mark Zuckerberg denies building 5,000 square foot doomsday bunker under his $270 million Hawaii compound, saying it's like a basement. This is over at New York Post. That's nypost.com. Mark Zuckerberg dismissed reports that he's building a 5,000 square foot doomsday bunker underneath a $270 million compound in Hawaii, insisting instead that it's just a little shelter. The 40-year-old tech tycoon was asked during a December 19th interview with Bloomberg about rumors that he's constructing an underground facility beneath his 1,400-acre home on the island of Kauai, one of the most northern islands in the northern Pacific archipelago. "No, I think it's just like a little shelter. It's like a basement," Zuckerberg, the third wealthiest person in the world behind Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, told Bloomberg's Emily Chang. Several wealthy individuals have been rumored to have constructed vast tunnels and underground networks in preparation for potential disaster, including PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, Tesla CEO Musk, and disgraced rapper Kanye West. Zuckerberg, who as of Thursday boasted a net worth value by Bloomberg Billionaires Index at $215 billion, has insisted that the aim of the ranch is to raise world-class cattle on beer and macadamia nuts in order to create some of the highest quality beef in the world. In December of last year, Wired reported that Zuckerberg was in the process of constructing Kulau Ranch, a 1,400-acre compound that includes a 5,000 square foot underground shelter, as well as more than a dozen buildings with at least 30 bedrooms and 30 bathrooms in total. The shelter alone is about the size of an NBA basketball court and more than twice the size of the average private family home in the United States. The ranch will have its own energy and food supplies, according to the Wired report, which noted that the locals on the island, with a population of about 73,000 people, were speculating about what the project will entail. The centerpiece of the project is 2 mansions that boast total floor area that is about the size of a football field, 57,000 square feet, according to the report. The 2 mansions will reportedly be linked together by a tunnel that branches off into the underground facility. Each of the dozen or so buildings that include guest houses and operations facilities will be connected by rope bridges that allow visitors to cross from one building to the next while making stops at 11 disc-shaped tree houses. One of the buildings is reportedly going to be equipped with a full-size gym, pools, sauna, a hot tub, a cold plunge, and a tennis court, according to Wired and Hawaii Now. The property, which is likely to be one of the most expensive in the world, is also said to include several elevators, offices, conference rooms, and an industrial-sized kitchen. Unconfirmed reports indicate that the shelter will have a blast-resistant door made of metal and filled with concrete, as well as living space, a mechanical room, and an escape hatch that can be accessed via a ladder. The Zuckerbergs are also reported to have installed some 20 security cameras just for one of the buildings on the ranch alone, according to The Wired. The compound stores are said to be keypad operated or soundproofed, while doors to the library are so-called blind doors, which are designed to imitate the design of the surrounding walls, according to Wired. Planning documents obtained by Wired showed that the compound will be self-sufficient, as it will include its own water tank that measures 55 feet in diameter and 18 feet tall and is powered by a pump system. The ranch already produces its own food thanks to cattle and horses, as well as a nursery, an organic ginger farm, and a turmeric farm nearby. Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, have bought up land on Kauai in 3 tranches, paying $17 million for 110 acres in December of 2021, buying 600 acres for $53 million in April of 2021, and acquiring 700 more acres in 2014 for $100 million. In 2016, Alan Parancini, a local journalist, wrote a critical op-ed that took Zuckerberg to task for erecting a rock wall in front of his 700-acre oceanfront property. He urged residents to tell Zuckerberg that abusing his stewardship of public beaches as if we're just another batch of Facebook victims is unacceptable. Parancini told Wired that after he wrote the op-ed, Zuckerberg's communications aides told him that the Facebook founder would no longer cooperate with him on any future requests for interviews or comment. It says they reached out to Meta but haven't gotten a response. Anyway, this story is over at nypost.com. Health in 2024, the biggest medical breakthroughs and research that gave us hope this year, is the story over at euronews.com. From research on new weight loss drugs to the impact of artificial intelligence, or AI, in medicine, 2024 has been marked by important scientific advances, especially in health. Euronews Health covered research that provided hope that new treatments or studies could improve people's health through better diagnosis, drugs, and knowledge. Here's some of the advances in health over the past year and the topics that received the most attention from the researchers. New diabetes drugs linked to other benefits besides weight loss. A class of diabetic drugs called GLP-1 receptor agonists has been making waves over the past few years, and this drug is no exception, with several new studies analyzing the impact of these blockbuster drugs. Besides helping people with type 2 diabetes and obesity, these drugs are now linked with a host of additional benefits. Research released this year found that semaglutide, marketed as Ozempic or Wegovy, reduced cardiovascular events such as stroke and heart attack in adults with pre-existing disease. These drugs have also been linked to reduced kidney failure, and another drug in the same class, tirzepatide, appeared to reduce the severity of sleep apnea. Dr. Elizabeth Loader, head of research at the British Medical Journal, BMJ, told Euronews Health it will be interesting to see if these drugs' weight loss benefits over a lifetime translate into reductions in all of these other outcomes. But, she added, we don't know what the long-term consequence might be or if people will need to keep taking these drugs or risk regaining the weight. Twice yearly HIV injection works better than a daily pill. New research was released this year about a twice-weekly human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, injection that is more effective than the daily oral pill pre-exposure prophylaxis at preventing the virus. HIV, which has killed an estimated 42 million people globally, can today be prevented and managed as a chronic health condition. Yet, out of the nearly 39.9 million people globally who are living with the virus, more than 9 million are not accessing treatment, according to UN AIDS. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in July found that no woman who received the twice-yearly injection contracted HIV in a randomized trial. Results published in November then found that the injection was 96% effective in preventing HIV infections in men. HIV experts have described the research as both stunning and unprecedented. A Swedish study found this year that a blood test was 90% accurate in determining if a person has Alzheimer's. This could make the process of diagnosing the condition less cumbersome, as patients currently need a sample of cerebrospinal fluid or a PET scan to determine if they have Alzheimer's. The neurodegenerative disease is the most common form of dementia, which impacts an estimated 7.8 million people in the European Union. New treatments for certain Alzheimer's patients were also approved this year. European regulators gave a green light to the Alzheimer's drug lecanemab, for instance, after initially rejecting it. The drug was shown in a trial to slow cognitive decline related to the disease. Loader at the BMJ told Euronews Health that the scientific journal sees a lot of research submissions on using artificial intelligence, AI, and seeing how doctors compare to the technology on diagnosis, but that they're often related to a single disease entity. She also said there were a lot of interest in new cancer therapies, such as immune checkpoint inhibitors, a type of immunotherapy, and a more personalized cancer therapy. We're seeing personalized therapy or somewhat personalized therapy come in and change outcomes, not necessarily cure people, but extend life in a meaningful way. So I would say that needs to be an area of emerging interest, she said. The UK's National Health Service, NHS, notably launched a trial for personalized cancer vaccines this year. Dr. Eric Rubin, editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, said in an email to Euronews Health that along with research on weight loss drugs, the impact of AI in medicine was another area with several journal articles and news articles. Rubin also highlighted studies published this year related to specific treatments for breast cancer and Hodgkin lymphoma that were practice-changing for physician readers. The ongoing effects of long COVID, which a recent study found can endure for years in young people, as well as research on the links of ultra-processed foods to several adverse health outcomes, are also important topics, experts say. Climate change and its impact on health is also a key area of interest for researchers, with more studies linking air pollution to health problems or looking at the climate impact of the healthcare industry, Loader said. A large Danish study published at the BMJ this year, for instance, found that air pollution was linked to infertility in men and noise pollution was linked to infertility in women. Rubin added that New England Journal of Medicine readers were particularly interested in the emergence of bird flu, H5N1, and other flares of infectious disease outbreaks around the globe. Again, this is over at Euronews.com.
Maybe it's much too early in the game. Oh, but I thought I'd ask you just the same. What are you doing, New Year's? New Year's Eve. Wonder whose arms will hold you good and tight when it's exactly 12 o'clock that night, welcoming in the Maybe I'm crazy to suppose I'd ever be the one you chose out of the thousand invitations you received. Ah, but in case I stand one little chance, here comes the jackpot question in advance. What are you doing New Year's Eve? Ah, but in case I stand one little chance, here comes the jackpot question in advance. What are you doing New Year's Eve? Oh, what are you doing New Year's Eve? Will I be with you? Will I be Will I be with
Daily Signal had the story, "Who can trust White House reporters who hid Biden's infirmity?" Even after the Wall Street Journal published a 4-byline bombshell detailing how President Joe Biden's staff energetically hid his ongoing cognitive decline from the public, there wasn't a single question at the White House briefing. No reporters demanded answers about how they were misled or complained they were pressured into silence. They mustered that umbrage over the Hunter Biden pardon, but this slow-rolling scandal was apparently too painful to recount. Perhaps they thought that since Joe Biden was already talked out of the re-election bid, the matter was settled. This scandal is already over, but Trump's scandals never stop emerging. Radio host Hugh Hewitt proclaimed that he had been calling Biden infirm for 2 years, but didn't know the depth of the infirmity that's now been revealed. Everyone inside the White House must have known, including the reporters. He said they were either explicitly complicit or recklessly indifferent to Biden's decline. Hewitt upset knee-jerk defenders of the media when he said, "With the exception of Peter Doocy, I would ban everyone from the White House press room who's been there for the past 4 years because they are obviously of no use to the country. They didn't tell us the number one thing, which is that Biden is not competent. Why in the world would Trump let them in?" Hewitt's guest, author Bethany Mandel, agreed about the media failure. "It was really disturbing, and it's funny because Brian Stelter and the columnists decree the trust that we should all have in the media, that we should all respect them and their hard work and sacrifice. Could you imagine any other job in America where you could do your job that badly and still keep on failing up? The media is pretty much it." For his part, Doocy expressed amazement on Fox that no one asked Karine Jean-Pierre a single question about this. His Fox colleague Jackie Heinrich was present, but Jean-Pierre did not call on her. No need to wonder why. The White House briefing room under politicians is like a roiling shark tank. Under Democrats, it's a shallow kiddie pool. Donald Trump allows hateful reporters to question him. Pro-Biden reporters have supinely accepted getting few opportunities to interview Biden and Kamala Harris until they decide they'll take a swing or two. Everyone knew the president was babbling and bumbling. They knew because they observed it firsthand, and they knew because he was kept away from the press and he was even kept away from his own cabinet members. They knew because reporters like Courtney Subramanian of the Los Angeles Times were in on it. Photographs showed that in a press conference, she asked a question that Biden had on a note card with her name and face on it. Some reporters, like former CNN political scribe Chris Cillizza, are confessing that they should have pushed back when Biden aides furiously argued asking questions was ageist. He admitted, "I should have not let the shame campaign to make you feel bad for asking the question get to me." But CNN's audience expects relentless anti-Trump bias, and questioning Biden seems like it's helping Trump. That's the reflex. Don't do anything that helps Trump, like your jobs. This entire spectacle makes it sickening that leftist journalists are all running around right now worrying that Donald Trump lawsuits against the press will cause them to self-censor, as if they haven't been aerobically self-censoring for the last 4 years. Again, that's over at dailysignal.com. You can see them setting the stage over there at the Kaiser Family Foundation's health news article this week. How America lost control of the bird flu, setting the stage for another pandemic. Keith Paulson's jaw dropped when farmers showed him images on their cell phones at the World Dairy Expo in Wisconsin in October. A livestock veterinarian at the University of Wisconsin, Paulson had seen sick cows before, with their nose dripping and udders slack. The scale of the farmers' efforts to treat the sick cows stunned him. They showed videos of systems they built to hydrate hundreds of cattle at once. In 14-hour shifts, dairy workers pumped gallons of electrolyte-rich fluids into ailing cows through metal tubes inserted into the esophagus. It was like watching a field hospital on an active battlefront, treating hundreds of wounded soldiers. Nearly a year from the first outbreak of the bird flu among the cattle, virus shows no sign of slowing. The U.S. government failed to eliminate the virus on dairy farms when it was confined to a handful of states, by quickly identifying infected cows and taking measures to keep their infections from spreading. Now, at least 875 herds across 16 states have tested positive. Experts say they've lost faith in the government's ability to contain the outbreak. "We're in a terrible situation and going into a worse situation," said Angela Rasmussen, a virologist at the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. "I don't know if the bird flu will become the pandemic, but if it does, we're screwed." To understand how the bird flu got out of hand, KFF Health News interviewed nearly 70 government officials, farmers and farm workers, and researchers with expertise in virology, pandemics, veterinary medicine, and more. Together with emails obtained from local health departments, which, through public records request, this investigation revealed key problems, including deference to the farm industry, eroded public health budgets, neglect for the safety of ag workers, and the sluggish pace of federal interventions. Case in point, the U.S. Department of Agriculture this month announced a federal order to test milk nationwide. Researchers welcomed the news but said it should have happened months ago, before the virus was so entrenched. It's disheartening to see so many of the same failures that emerged during the COVID-19 crisis reemerge, said Tom Balicki, Director of Global Health Program at the Council on Foreign Relations. There's lots more to this article here. I'll leave the link for this and all the stories I cover on my account at Gab. You can find me at BACFA. Well, to wrap things up this evening, I thought this would be a fun way to go out. Rand Paul reveals Matt Damon share among Hollywood celebrities eligible for taxpayer-funded insurance. Senator Rand Paul's annual Festivus Waste Report, he's a Republican from Kentucky, released Monday, targeted taxpayer-subsidized blood insurance for which some of the most loved and loathed celebrities are eligible. The senator's report never disappoints, highlighting absurd and bizarre projects funded by taxpayers, which this year included securing the Paraguayan border, studies on lonely rats and their relationship to cocaine, and various magical projects. This year, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy leading President-elect Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, the report's many fans are more hopeful than ever for progress eliminating and reforming Paul's favorite targets. Paul took to the Senate floor Monday to expose ultra-rich Hollywood celebrities who can get government insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program. Among Paul's targets were A-list movie stars, has-been entertainers, and an 80s pop star. Paul first targeted Nicolas Cage. Boy, that's a nice house worth $4.2 million in New Orleans, also eligible for government insurance. Paul told the Senate, look, I love Nicolas Cage. I'd go to parties at his house too. I'd pay to go see his movies, but I don't think we should buy insurance for his home. If he can get a $4.2 million home, I bet you he can buy his own insurance, Paul asserted. Paul's next target, an actor perhaps most notorious for being depicted as a slow-witted marionette puppet in Team America World Police. Matt Damon, he's had a lot of good movies, man. He must be doing great. His place cost $20 million, and it's eligible for government insurance too, Paul said. You think Matt Damon would be embarrassed to find out that the government is subsidizing his first $250,000? Shouldn't we all be embarrassed? Paul blasted the failing NFIP for losing money, arguing it should be reformed before Congress simply reauthorizes it. The program is $16 billion in the hole, and we just want to renew the program without any reforms. Just keep doing it. Keeps losing money. Just keep doing the same thing. Maybe Matt Damon can buy his own insurance. The Kentuckian next turned to a former pop icon turned Disney soundtrack contributor. Phil Collins, he's made some good music. He must have made some great music. His home is worth $40 million in Biscayne Bay, Florida. Also eligible for government insurance, Paul said on the Senate floor. Cher, she's been doing great for a long time, Paul said. She's got a $42 million place in Miami Beach, also eligible for government insurance. And, of course, it goes on, but that's the way the Festivus list goes, is pointing out all the waste, fraud, and abuse that could be found and documented and shared with the American public after the Christmas tree gets processed up there in Congress at the end of the year under duress. You can find that article again over at Breitbart.com. Well, that brings us to the end of another Atomic Biscuits and the end of another year. It will be a little bit different in 2025, don't you think, if we can get that far? I know it's going to be different. I know it's going to be fun. We all need to pivot. We all need to look at new challenges. We need to realize that those who are working against us are sabotaging the car. They're making problems for us. They're laying traps for us. Let's just go with our eyes open and our heads on a swivel. Let's point out those things that we can and make sure that we expose truth. From beautiful North Georgia, this is BACFA. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for Atomic Biscuits. Tune in again next week for more news and music. Check out BACFA on Gab at BACFA, as well as Bitchute, Rumble, D-Live and Odysee. Check out LastScoutRadio.com for fun content. Listen to WBN 324 on radio stations around the world, on many streaming platforms, and World Broadcasting Network WBN 324.zil.